All right, welcome back. Today we're going to be learning lesson 2-4, writing linear functions. These problems can be found on page 115 to 119 in your Algebra 2 textbook. All right, so by the end of this lesson, you will be able to use the slope-intercept form and the point-slope form to write linear functions, and you will be able to write linear functions to help solve problems. So let's get started with an example. The first thing we're going to do is write slope-intercept form of the equation of a line. So your problem's going to ask you to write an equation of the graphed line in slope-intercept form. Now before we can write an equation in slope-intercept form, you need to know what the slope-intercept form is, and that is the equation y equals mx plus b. And we've already talked about that a little bit. So let's get started. Remember, m is your slope and your b is the y-intercept. All right, so in order to write an equation of the graphed line in slope-intercept form, the first thing we want to do is identify the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is where the line crosses the y, and we can see it's right here at 0, not negative 0, at 0, 2, 0, 2. So our y-intercept is going to be 2. Y equals 2. All right, so we've done that, and that's pretty easy. So the next thing we have to do is find the slope. Now the easiest way to find the slope is just to find two convenient points, such as 0, 2, which we already found. I'm going to change colors here. Okay, so here's our 0, 2, and let's choose another one. Let's choose this one over here, 5, 0, over 5 up 0. All right, so all we have to do is count. Remember, slope is rise over run, the change of y over the change of x. So our y changes 1, 2, and it goes to the left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the rise is going 2, and the run is actually going negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, negative 5. So our slope is actually negative 2 over 5. And so now it's very easy to write our equation in y-intercept. We just say, or slope-intercept, we say y equals negative 2 over 5, which is our slope, x plus b, which we said was 2, so plus 2. So the equation of this line is y equals negative 2/5 x plus 2. And you can see that it's in the y equals mx plus b format. Okay, so why don't you try one on your own? Turn the video on pause for a minute, give it a try, and then turn your video back on and just check to make sure you got the solution correct. All right, here we go. We're going to write the equation of the graphed line in slope-intercept form. Again, remember the slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So the first thing we have to do is find the y-intercept, and we can see in this problem the line crosses the y-axis at 0, 3. So our y-intercept is 3. So we're going to say y equals 3. All right, and next thing we have to do is find the slope. So let's pick 2 points. Let's pick this negative 4 and this, negative 4, 0, and this 0, 3. And remember, slope is the same as rise over run. It's the change in y over the change in x. So the change in y is, the change in y, let's go this way first. 1, 2, 3. So we're going to say 3 over the change in the run, which is the x, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can see it's always going to be constant, 1, 2, 3 for the rise, 1, 2, 3, 4 for the run. So our slope is 3 over 4. So now we've already got all the information that we need to write our equation. It's y, remember the equation is y equals mx plus b. So we just have to put y. We know our m is the same as our slope. So the m is 3/4 x plus, and our b is our y-intercept, 3. So the equation for this line is y equals 3/4 x plus b. All right, and I hope you all got that. All right, let's move on to another example. The next example is finding the slope of a line given 2 or more points. All right, so the slope formula is one that we have not used yet, but you've kind of been using it just by counting, but now we're going to see it as an actual equation. And what the equation is for the slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. All right, so the first example says find the slope of each line, and the line has 2 points, 3, -2, and -1, 2. So it doesn't matter which one you call x1 and x2 and which one you call y1 and y2. You just need to keep it the same. So I'm going to call my 3 x1 and my -2 y1. And I'm going to call my second one x2 y2. All right, so now all I have to do is fill in my blanks. And it doesn't matter, I could have said this was x2, y2, and this one was x1, y1. It doesn't matter. But now I'm going to fill in my blank, and I do need to keep it the exact same. So I'm going to say m equals, it says y2 minus y1. So y2 is 2 minus my y1, which is a -2. Minus 2. And remember, I always tell you plus the opposite so you get your subtraction right. So 2 plus 2 is 4. Now when we do the x's, it says x2, so I'm going to choose my x2, which is -1, and my x1 minus x1, which is 3. Again, plus the opposite, so -1 plus a -3 equals a -4. And all of that equals -1. So we can see that the slope of this equation is -1. And that's all the question said, is find the slope of the line. So your answer is m equals -1. All right. So our next problem is, it looks a little bit different, but it's not really that much different. Again, let's just choose an x1 and a y1. So I like to choose the easiest ones. Some people like to choose a little harder. Let's choose, actually we'll choose a little bit more challenging. Let's choose this point and this point. This will be our x1, this will be our x2, I'm sorry, y2. Hold on, let me say that again. All right, this is x1, y1, and this is x2, y2. All right, so remember what our formula says, m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. All right, so let's go for it. Y2 is down here, 16, minus y1, which is 6. And all of that is going to be over x2, which is 11, minus 5 for our x1. So now all we have to do is subtract. 16 minus 6 is 10, and 11 minus 5 is 6. So our answer is not, although it could be 10 over 6, we're going to reduce that. 2 goes into 10 5 times, and 2 goes into 6 3 times. So you should go ahead and reduce these. I know I've told you on some fractions you don't have to reduce them, but when you're doing slope, go ahead and reduce it. Just makes it a little easier. So the slope of this line is 5 over 3. All right, now we have another equation or another problem that says the line shown. So we're going to use this line over here. Either point may be chosen as x1 and xy. So let's just go ahead and choose. Let's make this x1, y1, and let's make this x2, y2. All right, so all we have to do to find our slope, remember slope equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So our y2 we said was going to be -1. So let's put -1 minus our y1 right here, which is 3. And all of that is over x2. We said x2 would be 2 minus x1, which is also 2. All right, so we have something here. 1 plus a -3. -1 plus a -3 equals a -4. But look at this. 2 take away 2 is 0. All right, so when we come with a 0 at the bottom, that tells us that this is undefined. Undefined. All right. So, and if you will recall, this actual line is not a function because the x is paired with a -1 and it's also paired with a 3. So it doesn't fit into the definition of a function anyway. And so you can see that when you try and find the slope, it's actually undefined. So there's 3 ways to finding the slope. All right, so why don't you try to find the slope on your own? And I just gave you 2 ways here, so give it a try. Turn your video on pause for a minute, and then when you're ready, turn it back on and let's go. All right, here we go. So remember, it really doesn't matter which 2 points we choose. We just need to label them correctly. So let's choose -6, -3, and -4, -1. And if you chose 2 other ones, that's fine. But I'm going to call this x1 and y1, and this we'll call x2 and y2. So our slope formula equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And it really doesn't matter which way you choose it, but once you choose it, you need to keep it straight and make sure you stay the same way. Okay, so our y2 is -1 minus our y1, which is -3. All right, and our x2 over here is -4 minus our x1 is a -6. All right, remembering our rules for minus signs, we plus the opposite. So I'm going to go ahead and plus the opposites in here. So -1 plus a +3 equals a +2. And -4 plus a +6 is also 2, and that can reduce to 1. So you can see that our slope of this particular function is 1. All right, one more time, find the slope for a line that goes through points 2, -5, and -3, 5. So again, I always write my formula out first. It's just helpful to get it memorized and just to keep track of where you are. So go ahead and always do that first, and I always label x1, y1, and x2, y2. And again, you could have done it the other way, and if you'd like to try it the other way and see that it'll work either way, that's fine. All right, so y2 is -5, so I'm going to say -5 minus y1, which is also -5, and x2, which is -3, minus, and our x1 is 2. So let's go ahead and get our plus the opposites in. So -5 plus a +5 is 0, and -3 and -2 is a -5. But I have a 0 here. Okay, so in this case, it's just not going to have a slope. It actually is going to look like this, because if you just a straight horizontal line. So if you go ahead and plot it on the picture, you will see 2, -5. Let's just say 2, -5 would be down here, and -3, -5 would be somewhere down here. So you could see that it's just a horizontal line like this. All right, so we don't have any slope on this one. There's no slope. All right, let's move on to our next page. Because the slope of a line is constant, it is possible to use any point on a line and the slope of the line to write an equation of the line in point slope form. All right, so that's our point slope form, which is a little bit different than what you're used to. You're used to the slope intercept form, but now we're going to use the point slope form. And really and truly, the point slope form is a little bit easier because you don't have to do some substituting and things that you would. So let's just talk about this. The equation of a line with a slope of m and a point of xy is this. Here's our point slope form, and it looks pretty similar to what our slope looks like. It's y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So let's see if we can do one and put it into the point slope form. All right, and there's actually several ways that you can do this. I'm going to start with the actual point slope form. Let's do it this way first, and I left that off. Okay, so here we go. The first method is all we have to do is figure out, first of all, what the slope is. And then, so first we have to find the slope. So let's find the slope. Remember, m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So let's just choose some numbers. I like the number -1 and 1, and I like the number 3 and 0. They're a little bit easier to look at for me. So I'm going to label this x1, y1, and x2, y2, so I don't get confused. If you don't get confused, you don't need to worry about it. So y2 is 0 minus y1, which is 1, over x2, which is 3, minus, x1, which is -1. So 0 minus 1 plus a -1 equals -1 over, plus the opposite, 3 plus 1 is 4. So our slope on this particular problem is going to be 1 over 4, -1 over 4. All right, so now that we have our slope here, it's really easy to just fill in our problem. So let's just choose this 3, 0 again for our point. Okay, so we're going to use this 3, 0, and all we have to do is fill in the blank. So we're going to start out with y, because that's just going to be a given y, but our y1 is 0. You can see that's a 0 right there. Oops, let me fix that real fast. It's going to be y minus 0 equals m, which we said over here was -1/4. And our x, we're going to keep that x, but our x1 is 3, so -3. So there is your actual problem, y minus 0, which would be y, equals -1/4 times x minus 3. I'll just rewrite it like that. Y equals -1/4 x minus 3. All right. So then if you wanted to rewrite it so that it was in slope-intercept form, all we have to do is distribute. And so that would be y equals -1/4 x plus, okay, so this is plus the opposite. So -1/4 plus a -3 times a -3 is actually a positive 3 over 4. So there it is written back again in your slope-intercept form, which we're much more comfortable with, but the slope-intercept form is very easy to use. Okay, so, or this, yeah, the point slope form is very easy to write. All right, so another way you could do this is by using the slope-intercept form. It's a little harder because now we have to figure out what b is. All right, so first of all, we have to solve for b. We already solved for our slope. We know what that is. So let's, in order to solve for b, we're going to find an x and a y. So let's look back over here at our chart and use 3, 0 again. So 3 is the x and 0 is the y, so let's just fill those in. Y is 0. M, we saw from over here, is -1/4. And we're going to put in our x, which we said is 3, plus b. We don't know what b is, so we're going to solve for that here in just a minute. So negative 1/4 times 3 is negative, okay, let's see if I can write this in here. 0 equals negative 3/4 plus b. So if we add 3/4 to both sides, plus 3/4, negative 3/4 and positive 3/4 is 0. So if we add 3/4 to that side, we add 3/4 to this side. So we can see that 3/4 equals b. 3/4 equals b. So now we have all the information we need to write our equation, and it's y equals mx plus b. And we know that m, we already decided, was negative 1/4 x, and now we just solved for b, which we said was 3/4, and there's your equation, y equals. So you can see that both of these are the exact same. Y equals negative 1/4 plus 3/4. All right, so with that in mind, let's try another problem. All right, so we can solve problems that are with functions, with everyday things. And so this is an entertainment application. So let's give this one a shot. In the game of Monopoly, a player who lands on a property that is owned by another player must pay rent to the owner of the property. For most color properties, the rent can be modeled by a linear function of the selling price. So let's look at this, and let's see if we can figure out what this is going to be. So first of all, let x equal the selling price. Let's say selling price. Okay, and let's let y equal the rent. Okay, so our selling price is going to be our x's, and our rent is going to be our y's. All right, so now the question says find the slope and choose 2 points. So just like before, all we have to do is find 2 numbers and we can find the slope. So let's just pick 2. Let's say 60 and 2. And let's pick another one. Let's just do the next one down, 106. All right, so this is going to be our x1, y1, and this is going to be our x2, y2. All right, so the first thing we have to do is write our slope. So m for slope equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So let's come over here. Y2 is 6 minus our y1, which is 2. X2 is 100 minus our x1, which is 60. And so 6 minus 2 is 4. 100 minus 60 is 40, and that can reduce to 1/10. So our slope now we know is 1/10. M equals 1/10. All right. So now it just says find the equation for the rent function, use the point slope form. And like I said, this is actually a little bit easier because we don't have to do all that substitution and everything to solve for b. So let's just fill this in. Let's choose our point to be our point slope form. Let's choose the, let's see, let's just use this 60 and 2 here, okay? 60, 2. All right, so our point slope formula says y minus y1, equals m times x minus x1. All right, so let's just take a look at this. We're going to say y minus, and our y is 2, so y minus 2 equals m, which we said up here was 1/10, times x minus the x1, which is 60, x minus 60. So here is your actual formula in point slope form. Now, we can go ahead and distribute if you wanted to have it written in the point y-intercept or the point intercept form. We could just distribute this over to make that 1/10 x plus a negative 60 over 10, which is actually negative 6. So we have y minus 2 from right here equals all of that. And if we add 2 to both sides, plus 2, we get y equals 1/10 x plus 2. And actually, I think I did something wrong there. Let's see here. Somewhere along the way here, I made a mistake. It should be, 6 minus 2, negative 6 is 4. There's the mistake right there. So let's get rid of this. Oops. And that would be negative 4, because negative 6 plus positive 2 equals a negative 4. There you go. So our equation is actually y in point-intercept slope-intercept form is y equals 1/10 x minus 4. Alrighty, here's another one using the same situation that we used. We already discovered that the slope m is equal to 1/10. So we're a step ahead on that. We don't need to do that. All right, so the question says, graph the relationship between the selling price and the rent. How much is the rent for Illinois Avenue, which is selling for a price of $240? All right, so they took all of these points, 62. So you can see here's for Mediterranean Avenue. This is 62. And then they had 106, so they went over 106. So you can see that they plotted, here's 180, 14. So they went up here, and here it is. So you can see this whole line represents all of this information right here. So this green line is representing this information here. And so what they're wanting to find out, if we're following the same function, to find the rent for Illinois Avenue. All right, so to find the rent for Illinois Avenue, it says use the graph or substitute its selling price at $240 into the function. So we can just kind of look here. If we go, the selling price is $240, and we just come up here to where it hits our graph, we can see that it's somewhere higher. It looks like it's going to be about right in here, somewhere around 18 or so. But we could actually just write our formula out and solve it using our equation that we just wrote a minute ago, y equals 1/10 x minus 4. So let's write that down. Y equals 1/10 x minus 4. And this time it's saying that they want our x to be $240. So say 1/10 times $240, and then that's going to be minus 4. That will be our y, which is our rent. All right, so 1/10 times 240 is actually $24. Minus 4 equals 20. So y equals 20. And I think that's a little bit deceiving on our map here. Doesn't quite look like that, but that's what the answer is. So when you do it exactly, that's what our problem answer is. So our rent would be 20. Okay, so let's move on. Why don't you try one on your own real fast and see if you can express the cost of a linear function of the number of items. So why don't you just try this problem on your own, put it on pause, and then come back and we'll solve it out. Okay, so part 4a says express the cost as a linear function of the number of items. All right, so we have x1, y1, and x2, y2. So first of all, let's use our slope formula to say m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So y2 is $21.50 minus y1, which is $14, And all of that is over x2, which is 7, minus 4, which equals 3. Okay, so we have 3, and 2150 minus 14. Just real quick, do it on my calculator. 2150 minus 14 equals 7.5. 7.5 over 3 divided by 3 equals 2.5. So our slope m equals 2.5. All right, so now our problem is our equation to this problem. We have to figure out what we can just write this into the point to the point slope formula, which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So let's just go ahead and fill it out. Y minus, let's use y1 is 14, equals m, which is 2.5 times x minus 4. All right. So now let's distribute everything. We're going to say y minus 14 equals 2.5x minus 2.5 times 4 is equal to 10. So this is going to be minus 10. All right, so we still haven't got it quite into the slope intercept. So let's add 14 to both sides, plus 14. So y equals 2.5x plus 4. So here is our equation for this function right here. So now the rest of it's pretty simple. They just say find the cost of 18 items. So we know what our x is. X is going to be 18. So if our function is y equals 2.5x plus 4, all we have to do is fill this 18 into our x. So y equals 2.5 times 18 plus 4. And when we do that, we say 2.5 times 18 is 45. 45 plus 4 equals 49. So y equals 49. You could put that right there. All right, so it would cost $49 to buy 18 of these items. Okay, so next let's talk about parallel and perpendicular lines. You probably learned this last year in geometry. Parallel lines, as you can see, they actually have the exact same slope. So if both slopes are defined, the slopes of parallel lines are equal, okay? The slopes of a parallel vertical lines are undefined, okay? So vertical lines like this, we've talked about before, that's an undefined function. And so, but if they're the exact same slope, like this, and they're the exact same, then the lines are parallel. All right, if both slopes are defined, that means they're not vertical. The slopes of perpendicular lines are opposite reciprocals. This would be something you might want to write down in your notes, opposite reciprocals, all right? The slope of perpendicular line are opposite reciprocal. So for example, if the slope of this particular line, the red one here, the slope is -3/2, the opposite reciprocal is +2/3. And if you're not sure, we know that when you multiply those together, it ends up to give you -1, which is what they tell you right here, -1. So when you're looking at slopes of parallel lines, you have the exact same slope. And when you're looking at slopes of perpendicular lines, the slopes are opposite reciprocals. All right, so let's do a problem with that. says write the equation of each line in slope-intercept form, and we want it to be parallel to this other line here, 1.5x plus 6, and it's going to go through 0.45. So remember, parallel lines have equal slopes. And this equation of a line already tells us what our slope is, so we don't even have to look for that right now. So I'm going to use, you can use this tells us to use the slope-intercept form. So remember, the slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Okay, so in this case, we already know what our slope is. It's 1.5. So y equals 1.5x plus b. Now we still need to find out our b, so what we're going to do is take this 4, 5 over here, and we're going to fill that in. So for our y is 5, we're going to put 5 equal 1.5, and we're going to multiply that by our x, which is 4. All right, and then plus b. So 1.5 times 4 is equal to 6. Okay, so we have 5 equals 6 plus b. So let's move our 6 to the other side, so b is all by itself. So that leaves us with -1 equals b. All right, so now we have our slope, and all we have to do is put it into a new formula. Y equals 1.5x plus our new b is -1. And so here's our equation of a line that is perpendicular to this line, and it goes through 0.4, 5. All right, the next one says to write the equation of a line that is perpendicular to this line and goes through 0.6, -4. So first of all, let's look at our slope here. The slope of this line is -3/4. And so we need to use the opposite reciprocal. So the opposite is going to be positive, and the reciprocal is 4/3. So the slope that we're going to use is positive 4/3. Notice that it is opposite, and it's the opposite of the negative, so it's positive, and it's the reciprocal of the 3/4, so it's 4/3. All right, so remember our slope-intercept line is y equals mx plus b. So now we have our slope, so we're going to go ahead and put that in for 4/3. And our y we see is -4. So let's put -4 in place of our y. Our x we see is 6, so make that 6. And let me fix this. Hold on. This was supposed to be 4/3. All right, so 4/3, 6 times 4 is 24, divided by 3 is 8, plus b equals -4. So let's just get our b by itself. So if we subtract 8 from both sides, -8, -4 plus -8 is -12 is equal to b. So now we have our m and our b. So now we can write our formula in, and so it's going to be y equals 4/3 x plus -12. And here is your formula, your equation for the line perpendicular. All right, why don't you give that a try and put your video on pause and give it a try. We're almost done. Okay, so here we go. It says write the equation of a line in slope-intercept form parallel to y equals 5x minus 3 and through 0.14. So let's go ahead and do it. First of all, it's parallel, so our slope is going to be the same. So we already know m equals 5. So all we have to do is solve for b. So let's remember y equals mx plus b. That's the slope-intercept form, and we need to solve for b. So let's fill in what we know. We know m equals 5. We know that one of our x is 1, so 5 times 1, and our y is 4 plus b. So 5 times 1 is 5 plus b equals 4. and we want b to be by itself. So let's subtract 5 from both sides. So that's -1 equals b. So our new equation is going to say y equals 5, because that's our slope, 5x plus b, which is -1, -1, and you could have also written 5x minus 1, and that would be fine too. Excuse me. Okay, you were to do one more. This one says perpendicular. So when we do a perpendicular line, our slope has to be opposite reciprocal. All right, so our opposite is going to make it negative. The same m equals, it's going to be -6/5. All right, so our slope-intercept equation is y equals mx plus b. So we have to solve for our b here, so let's fill in what we know. We know our y is -2, so we're going to say -2 equals, and our m is over here, -6/5. Our x is 0 plus b. All right, so this is all 0, so we see that -2 equals b. So now we have all the information we need. We have an m and a b, and that's all we need. So we just have to say y equals -6/5x plus -2. And that is your lesson for today. I hope you guys learned a lot, and I will talk to you soon. Have a great day. Bye.